allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, if you could please call the roll. Edwards.
Here.
Katsipatinos. Here. Houston. Here. Kozak. Here. Panzera.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
President Keeler. Here. Mayor Kearns. Here. Director Dvorsky.
Here.
City Attorney Kuzan. Here. Director Miller. Here. All are present.
Thank you. Moving on, we have the approval of proceedings for June 6th and June 21st.
I would move to approve with some changes that I submitted earlier via email. They just dealt with the portions where I was giving my remarks or comments, so just some clarifying changes.
Yes, so I'm fine with those changes. I would ask in the future if you have written down comments that you provide, that you ask them to be attached as an attachment to the minutes as you're presenting them, so that Leilani does not have to try
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
transcribe all those.
I'm happy to
That
do
would be
that.
much easier and clearer for that.
Yep, happy to do that, thank you.
Second motion.
Motion is second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Moving on, we have comments from visitors. First of all, our online comment form that we will read into the record for the name and subject. We have Ella Stevens of 1248 Grandview Avenue, and the subject of comments is pool policies. And we will attach those to the official minutes. Moving on, we have Jen and Daryl Hemp. If you would like to come to the podium to introduce your comments.
Thank you.
Sure. And just as a heads up, we try to limit comments to approximately 3 minutes to make sure that we get through all of our agenda items. So just wanted to give you a heads up.
Sure. Summarize accordingly. So we're Jen and Daryl, and we live on Lincoln Road. And to make a long story short, our neighbors left their dog out running around loose in the back. And we have a shared driveway. Came home from a walk, and it attacked and mauled Jen. So that's going as expected. But I did want to ask two main things. One being, there's an old rule on the books about disposition of dangerous dogs for Grandview. I wanted to ask about, I know that that's not really something that's usable or anything right now, but if there's a way or process to go about bringing out an updated version of something like that, because it lives 50 feet away. We see it every single day. So that's going about everything. And secondarily, just there is a leash law rule, but I see dogs walking without leashes constantly and fresh off an attack and etc. Our reaction to loose dogs running up, even if they look friendly, is different today than it was yesterday. So I just wanted to check to see if that could be, I guess, more of a focus, just to keep situations like this from happening. Do you have anything else?
I'll just add, we moved to Grandview for a safe, small community, and since this happened at the end of April, I've been afraid to take our dogs for a walk, because we were just out for a morning walk. So it's unfortunate, but we've just seen a lot of loose dogs around Grandview, whether it's in someone's front yard. This was, like I said, at our neighbor's house, and so just looking for some sort of enforcement or other way to feel safer in the community among dogs that appear friendly but clearly are not, and still dealing with my injuries from that, both physically and emotionally too.
Thank you so much for
Clarification question. Sure. Just
Councilmember Panzera.
for the record, you said Lincoln Road, but what's the?
Oh, 1580.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Director Kuzan, this is public comment. We don't really have a back and forth.
Oh,
here
sure,
this
that's
time.
fine.
But I would ask if you could prepare some answers to your questions to see if there's anything that we might do. And is it okay if we follow up via email? Is that?
Oh, yeah, however,
okay with you? Okay. And we have your email on file, so if you could look into those two questions for us, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming tonight, and glad to see you're doing better.
Working on it, yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on, we have Austin Carter of 1203 Westwood Avenue. Would you like to come to the podium, please?
Hello, Austin Carter, 1203 Westwood. I'm here just to provide comment about the COGO payment currently being considered by City Council. I just sat in the finance meeting and I just have a couple comments. One is about how, for me and a lot of people I know, COGO bikes are key to something called utility cycling. Now, a lot of people might know what utility cycling is, but when most people think about cycling, they think about kids cycling or 40-year-old men in spandex or like tooling around on a Sunday afternoon, and that is all cycling and that is all great. But there's a specific subset which I think people don't tend to think about, and that's using a bike as a means of going and doing a thing about your life. And these bikes are really useful for that. And that's a really key part of reducing car traps, which makes our streets safer, and rideshare programs are key to that piece of the puzzle for the community. About the specific subsidy that's being discussed, listen, I'm not a municipal finance person, so I can't speak to whether the return on investment is good or bad. I'll leave that to people more qualified than myself, but I would just say that public subsidy of something that's a public good is something that in general I'm in favor of. I've lived for a period of time in the UK, in London, and they have a bike share program there that's publicly administered, and its funding, I think, is about publicly subsidized by, I think, between 20 and 30%. Grandview Heights is not London, I understand that, but the idea that we recognize this as a public good that's worth investment is something that I'm in favor of. And then finally, many people maybe have never ridden a COGO bike, so I have a COGO bike, actually I have two outside, and after the meeting, if anyone here would like to have their first COGO bike ride, I'd be happy to walk you through it. So that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I have no other comment forms. Is there anyone who's missing out? Anybody? No? Okay, moving on. Department head report, service department.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to give you some updates on, from the service department. You should have already got a report which has a little more detail about a lot of different things that we're working on. I'll go over just a couple of things just to give you an update. Street program is nearly complete, absence of some patchwork to do around town. It was focused more on doing a lot of alleys this year. They got in town early and got done quick and did a nice job with very little issues. And the project went well. Goodell South was another big one that's went on this year, that the streets and everything are in, utilities are in. We do have the signal in at Twin Rivers Drive, but you're probably wondering why we're not letting traffic out there yet. We're holding off on it. They just finally got it done, got it tested. We're going to hold off a little bit longer on it because there's a large dirt pile basically that came from that project sitting on there, and they're getting ready. They just bid it out, accepted contracts, they're signing those contracts. They're getting ready to move all that dirt. There's going to be a lot of trucks coming in and out there, and we don't want through traffic until we get that taken care of. So that's kind of scheduled for the end of August. As soon as that's done, we're ready to get that intersection open to the public, and it'll be safe. We want to make sure everything's safe. We're afraid to go down, starts getting a lot of usage through there now. We've got trucks that got to cross. So we're going to hold off on that a little bit longer. One of the other items we have, we believe, we've been told that we're going to see our bucket truck that we ordered last year, and as everybody knows, supply and necessity with the vehicles, that type of stuff, it's supposed to be in by the end of the month. So we're looking forward to getting that. So hopefully we'll see that. We also have a dump truck that we ordered last year. We have a cab and chassis and no stainless steel bed. We're looking for that hopefully by the end of this month. So we're finally getting caught up with last year's orders on vehicles. And as you know, that's been an issue for quite some time. President Council came before and asked me how things are going. We've really had a great summer, not a whole lot of issues, but now's my butt, and except for this. We're getting ready, as you know, we're on the Fairview project, and one of the things we're, not just us, but all communities are running into is the supplies to do these projects. Ductile iron is one thing, which is used for the main water lines. Used to be able to get order ductile iron and get it in a few months, maybe up to 4 months. That has grown to 12 months now. Light poles, traffic signal poles and things that we're gonna need for this project are kind of in the same situation. For ductile iron, some of the things you understand what happened with ductile iron. In just a few years, they went from 12 plants down to 7 plants to do these. This is since 2009, they went from 12 down to 7 plants. COVID and staffing was another issue that's thrown right all behind. The foundry operations can't even get parts and equipment to run their foundries, so they're having those issues. The supply of, one of the other things that prompted and made the ductile iron another issue is plastic pipe, as you know, with the fuel costs and oil, crude. Plastic comes from that, and there's an issue with getting plastic pipes, so people can't get plastic pipe for water. Now it's moved to ductile iron. At one time, they moved from ductile iron to plastic. So the supply and demand is a serious issue in the raw materials for it. So it's pushing it back quite a ways. The reason I mention this is what a lot of communities are going to be doing, and what we're going to be asking to do as soon as we get our numbers and everything in line is, a lot of communities are ordering those materials before we ever get the contracts with the contractor. Typically, as the plan is for Fairview, we'll bid that out in this fall. We'll go through that process, we'll sign contracts, and then once the contractor signed, the contractor orders these materials. If we do that, water line first thing down the ground, we have no way to get the project started. It delays the project for a considerable amount of time, and we're going to do this project next year. So what a lot of communities are doing is the city themselves are going to ordering certain materials early prior to getting into the contract phase of it. It gets pulled out of the contract, so it's save money, maybe even slight savings because it's not a markup. But we're needing to possibly do that, and we're putting our information together in numbers. So I want to give you a heads up on that so you understand that this is not just a situation here. All the communities, some of the communities have already spent millions of dollars ordering materials. We're probably looking at $1 million here to get the materials that we need for the project ordered ahead of time so the project can happen on time. If not, we could literally be delayed a month or a year. So I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that and came with that. You know, a lot of places are having to change bid dates and completion dates because of this, and we want to try to, our goal is to try to get this built next year. So we really want to try to get that done. That was the main things I went over. If you've got my report, I'd be glad to answer any questions on anything that's in there or anything else you might have. To give you some information.
All right, are there any questions for the director? No. All right.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much. You are excused. Of course, you are always welcome to stay.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Mr. Bevner talking about the quarter marathon and my favorite MC of all the races I do. So it's always nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Council President Keeler, Mayor Kearns, council members, thank you for the opportunity to give you a little background on M3S Sports and what we proposed, the new inaugural Ohio Health Quarter Marathon and 5K on August 28th here in Grandview Heights. My name is David Babner. I'm the founder and race director of M3S Sports. I sit on a number of boards relevant to this, one of which is the Greater Columbus Sports Commission. I've been on that board since 2011 and worked to bring some of the bigger events to Columbus and represent Logan and that team there. Also sit on the board of the North Market, both downtown and Dublin. M3S Sports was founded in 2002. Leader in the creation, management, marketing, and production of running and walking events in Central Ohio. Our firm's dedicated to celebrating a healthy, active lifestyle of not only our participants, but our partners and the communities in which we produce our events. We touch about 50,000 participants a year throughout 15 events. The largest one we have is the Ohio Capital City Half Marathon on August 30th, on April 30th. This past year, the event attracted almost 12,000 runners and walkers and more than 30,000 spectators downtown Columbus and surrounding neighborhoods. It creates millions of dollars in economic impact every year. We also produce a number of other events, including Flying Feather, First on the First, and we have partnerships with the Memorial Tournament, Ohio State, Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Columbus Crew. But what I wanted to really talk about today is what we're talking about with the inaugural Grandview Yard Quarter Marathon and 5K. We're incredibly excited, our whole team's excited, all of our partners, many of which are involved in the Capital City Half Marathon, including Ohio Health, are very excited to establish an annual running and walking event in the city of Grandview Heights. We're celebrating a healthy, active lifestyle in Grandview. The major focus of the event will be the major focus of the event, and we'll complete it with a post-race party in Ray DeGraw Park. And that's where the ordinance, asking for a waiver of the provisions of the ordinance to obtain a charity liquor permit will start tonight. Charity is a big component of what we do. We've partnered for this event with the Buckeye Purple Heart Foundation as well as the Ohio Health Foundation. The inaugural year will be a remarkable celebration of Grandview Heights, Arlington, Marble Cliff, and Columbus residents. We'll also have a number of participants from all over Ohio and neighboring states. While the active, healthy lifestyle is incredibly important, we understand visitor spending and economic impact is as well. The collective vision with many of our partners here is coming for the event and staying for the weekend. We're working with a number of local businesses and community partners. Locally, obviously, Mike Patterson and Taylor Tobias from Rec and Parks, Brian Cheek from Destinated Grandview, David Downs of Tri-Village Chamber Partnership, Joe Henderson, Arlington, Nationwide Realty, Nationwide, Giant Eagle, the Brecky Shack, Avenero, Winans, and a number more there. So excited to partner with them. While I talk about the celebration, and many of you have seen what M3S Sports does and what we're talking about with a post-race party in the park, safety is incredibly important and vital to everything we do. Our medical team is the best in the endurance sports business, led by Dr. Ben Bring from Ohio Health. Our medical team coordinates with all safety services in Grandview Heights, including Fire Chief Eisenbacher, Police Chief Stearns, Columbus Fire, Columbus Police, American Red Cross. Our core medical team consists of physicians, nurses, athletic trainers, EMTs, hand operators, and all other persons trained in first aid. We're just very excited to partner with Grandview Heights and look forward to a remarkable celebration of the healthy, active lifestyle in August.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time?
I have one.
Yes.
What's the route?
So I'm going to hand you some of the route and where we're starting and finishing up, and some road closures and some things like that. So I have 8 copies of this, not knowing how many I need, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me to approach or not.
And what is the entrance fee?
So the entrance fee varies. Joel, I'm going to hold off on one for you.
No problem.
Over to you. Let's see. Oh, you do get that. The entrance fee varies anywhere from $45 to $65, depending upon when you do it. And there's a number of Run Grandview Yards on the website, so all of that information is up there, but that gives you kind of a highlight of what we're proposing for you. What we call sort of mimosas in the park and a small VIP setup for things like that. Race will leave from the park, run down towards into the city of Columbus and loop around. It's in consultation with both chiefs. We've kind of limited the amount of time in Grandview Heights, but have kept the start and the celebration right there.
I'll just say that I'm going to be out of town that day, but I wish I was here. I was running it.
Actually, that's really comforting.
Okay.
That's really comforting for us.
Hopefully this becomes an annual event that continues to grow over the years.
Now that means I can run it.
Decide if I can pull off a quarter.
Is there a penalty to
5K?
to beat the council?
We should, that actually is a really good idea. We have finishers medals for every single person that participates, including city councilmen, but in the event it's in the beach, then we should have to beat the council trophy.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of them.
Very good. Are there any further questions?
Because Chris will be.
Director Museum.
Dave, I think when I communicated with your colleague who was helping plan this, it was not clear to me that the race would actually run within the city. I was under the understanding that only the after event was gonna be in the park, which is not a problem so long as we have coverage for, the street closures and so forth. So, and I know that Chief Eisenacher is shaking his head yes, that's on his end, that's covered. I don't know about, whether the acting police chief is in a position to say tonight.
If I may,
Yeah.
I believe 8 special duty officers are requested,
Yes,
and then you agreed to that.
yes.
They have been anticipated, okay. So then the only other question I have, Dave, is, the start time and the end time. I didn't know if you needed like setup time in advance of both, so I would want to, make sure we expand if necessary the legislation to cover setup times and so forth.
Yes, so there's a full production schedule that's been run through the chiefs and the city of Columbus and that. So I could get you, I'd like to give you the opportunity, or I'd like to take the opportunity to make sure our operations team gives me what they say, so
Okay.
I don't say something tonight that they then have to execute in. But it would be a morning setup, it would be a morning setup that morning early, or what we've done in the past with an event that starts at 7 o'clock, is set up, have tent vendors and porta-john vendors set up in and around the park the night before.
Okay, yeah, so right now we've got the closure basically just from 7 to 9:30, so we'll want to clarify
Yes.
that and amend this accordingly.
And is that the resolution?
That's just.
So the resolution is for, the alcohol provision,
So that
but
should
the
not
lease
have
also
set up
needs to
right.
be updated.
All right, well, we'll have 3 readings to that,
Yep.
so we don't need to worry about that.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
this will be read later this evening. You're welcome to stay. Again, we appreciate your presentation and all that you're doing to bring folks to Granby Heights, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on, council committee reports. Yeah, finance.
We met, Finance Committee met at 6:30 this evening for discussion on 2020-09, and I can speak to that when it comes up on the agenda.
Thank you, planning administration. No meeting, no report. Recreation services and public facilities.
No meeting, no report.
Safety. Oh, sorry, no meeting, no report. Economic development.
No meeting, no report.
We should also have what did I call it? The aggregation. The aggregation, yeah. Gregory Vorsky, is there any update on that? No, no update? Thank you. Council liaison reports, Granby Library.
For the library, online registration is now open for our child and babysitting safety course. It's going to be July 16th, taught by medics from the Granby Heights Division of Fire and EMS. And look for the GHPL pop-up library. It'll be around at Granby Pop and Music on the Lawn. The youth services staff is presenting Read Local on the 13th at 11 a.m., featuring a meet and greet and activities with local children's authors. And Music on the Lawns continue through July. Kanan Faulkner prepares this for me, and he said that on the 19th, the Tony Monaco Trio performs, and that he's related to Frank Monaco, who served as the Marble Cliff Mayor for 32 years. Excuse me, as council person, treasurer, council president, and mayor, and it's Tony's uncle, I believe. And Kanan, who sends me this, he is a musician, and he's in a band called Randy's, and they are playing on the 26th.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. City's Night Under the Stars family camp out, the library will be part of that. It's on July 29th with a special story time.
Very good. That's always super fun. Moving on, we have school. It's summer. Yay, everyone enjoy their summer holiday. Moving on, chamber.
No report.
Planning commission.
Planning Commission did not have any cases or applications last month. They did engage in a educational workshop that primarily surrounded legal parameters and boundaries. That was facilitated by Attorney Compage, and that's the extent of it.
Great. Thank you, Coda.
CODA advisory panel met last Tuesday. I was unable to make that, but it was just a quick update on LinkUs. Nothing really substantive to Grandview was discussed, from what I understand. But the other big news, and I thought Mr. Carter would steal my thunder with his public comment, but he was talking about something else. But CODA has changed their mind about rush hour lines. The 75 will continue, and I forget what I forget in the minutes. I mentioned to Council President Keeler last week when the CODA folks, Josh Roth, was here to commend them on that, thank them for that decision. But when they came to speak about the update on the LinkUs program, but I just want to say that I'm very pleased that the 75 will continue to.
Great. We are all happy that 75.
President, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Does that apply to all the lines that were in jeopardy?
Oh, the rush hour lines.
Oh, the rush hour
Yeah.
lines, okay.
There was just, a couple in Dublin and Worthington.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Moving on, we have Morpsey. I forwarded all to you today of the communication for the Summit on Sustainability, which will be October 14th, 2022 this fall at the Hilton downtown. If you would like to attend, please let Leilani know. It should be another rip-roaring, exciting time to learn about sustainability with our Morpsey friends. Moving on, Destination Grandview.
So you were talking about thunder being stolen. The biggest update with Destination Grandview would be this quarter marathon and 5K that we had a lovely presentation on already. So that would have been the main update thing to talk about Destination Grandview, but just some anecdotal good news. The bed tax was significantly higher, about $6,000 higher than the first distribution, so the second distribution. So people are coming back, staying in hotels. Yay.
Great. Sustainable 2050.
Awesome. So there was a meeting on June 17th. I was able to join that at Bedell Darby Nature Center. So we got to take a walk down to that beautiful, very diverse body of water. And we also had the privilege of hearing from Tim Maloney, who's the Franklin County Metro Parks Director. He presented on the Metro Parks in Rapid 5, which was a great presentation. Then I want to highlight just a few other opportunities upcoming. So there's an opportunity to spread the word about local sustainability achievements via Morpsey's social media. Board meetings are at the annual summit, which you just mentioned, President Keeler, on October 14th. To do this, you can submit photos with a brief description of your local sustainability initiative to Brandy Whetstone. I'm looking over at our Sustainable Grandview representative in the crowd. And then Columbus and Franklin County are also seeking volunteers to help collect environmental data about the hottest and coolest places in the region. For that opportunity, you reach out to David Salabrisi with the City of Columbus. And then there is grant applications are now being accepted for the SWACO Community Waste Reduction grant opportunity. The deadline is August 5th. And Sustainable Columbus has teamed up with Solar United Neighbors, Morpsey, Impact Community Actions, and Simply Living to offer a solar co-op to all homeowners in Franklin County. This will allow homeowners to come together to increase their purchasing power to get better pricing, and there'll be 2 co-op rounds, July to October 2022, and then January to April 2023. And then finally, actually you've already touched on the Summit on Sustainability is October 14th. That's all.
Great. I would just add, I think I saw today they're still looking for 50 volunteers for the heat map. So if anyone's interested, there's a few more folks to take for that. Next, mayor's report.
Thank you. Everybody had a great 4th. Arguably was the midpoint of summer. I would be remiss not to say something about the tragedy that occurred here in Highland Park, Illinois. That's very much on our minds, and there are no words. Thoughts and prayers is very cliche in these situations, but that's really what I want to express. And we're certainly grateful for those first responders who staff our events, and I really just wanted to acknowledge that. I want to thank Director Hughes, who's gone home to his family for getting ahead of the, what is, I think, a very serious disruption in supplies for municipalities. We've seen some of that with light poles and signals already, and with our partner, the schools, he's managing this Fairview project with others in the city staff, and this would be very challenging if we were to have to delay it a year, so I appreciate that. From the service department, we did get the grant for an additional 1,000 totes, and so we encourage residents to sign up if they would like them, and we'll keep close track of who's on the list and get them to you. I mentioned to you all that we were beta testing 311. We're really close. There's one little bug that somehow popped up, and we're working through with the vendor. It was working and then it wasn't, but you know, that's really the only thing before we can launch it. We want to be mindful about making sure it's a successful launch. Avoiding dumpster fires, literal dumpster fires. We did have a small trash truck fire. Everybody's fine. Property other than trash was not damaged, but it resulted from, according to the assistant chief, either two chemicals that were discarded together or two separate households putting two things in that reacted. It was put out right away with kitty litter. So, but really need residents to be cognizant about when they do the trash, hazardous materials are not supposed to go to the landfill, and SWACO has information about where to take them, oftentimes at no cost. Finally, I will say some remarks later about the bond issue, but I will address that when it comes up on the agenda. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for the mayor? Okay, moving on, Director of Operations, Director Jaworski.
The administration has been working a lot on the bond issue and the building specifications and so forth, so that's been a big focus for us. I wanted to highlight some things that were in the department head reports that are new and I thought were interesting. In the building department, they mentioned a new 5-story residential commercial building in 22 Williams is moving forward, as you can see when you drive by. In the fire department report, there's 155 more calls for service this year. And I also found it interesting, because I hadn't seen it before, that some of the non-emergent patients are being routed to outlying hospitals, causing the extended intervals for our medics to return to service. So just another example of, the workforce problems, whether it's workforce or equipment. It's a new dynamic, a new challenge operationally for all of us. Found it interesting in the fire prevention and education activities that got partial occupancy starting in July for Southern Station, 60 of those units at least. We received the drawings for the rail restaurant and they're being evaluated. Fire's run totals are, they average 7 or 8 runs a day. Busiest day was 18 runs. Those are some interesting statistics. I live it every day as they drive by my window. And the same thing with police. Police reports says a 15% increase in June from the month of May. So it just reiterates for us the importance of both of the safety forces to be properly staffed for both of those, because they're 24/7 operations. And we're doing our best for prompt timing, whether their candidates are new to the profession or laterals around Central Ohio and other places looking for a new opportunity. So those are some of the challenges in 2022 that are manageable but new to us and difficult during this transition period.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the director? Moving on, Director of Finance.
Today was a big day. The audit report was released by the Auditor of State's office. So you all probably received an email with the link. It's available on their website. We've also put the audited 2021 annual comprehensive financial report on the city's website, so that new data is out there. Total income tax receipts year to date are down 3.85% from last year. Withholding is down $463,000 or 6.5%.
our income tax administrators have been watching the withholding to see, they can see who's paying what, and they are seeing some new businesses that are outside the city paying additional withholding dollars, which tell us that these are probably work from home dollars where employers are adjusting their withholding to withhold to Grandview for people now working from home. The problem is withholding is still down, and we're seeing increases from some of these accounts, so it's not offsetting the loss in commuter tax. And hotel tax continues to be something that we're watching. It's not quite rebounding how we hoped, but it's definitely much better than last year, and I think it'll just continue to go up throughout the year. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Okay, moving on, city attorney report.
I submitted my report to you and would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the director? No? The director of planning and community development is excused. We will move on to old business, item number 1.
Ordinance 2022-09, an ordinance to approve supplemental appropriations during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Yes, Finance Committee met on this at 6:30 today. Representative from COGO gave a presentation. There was a discussion about providing funding with 2 grant monies we have available totaling $8,000 in lieu of the $35,100. And what the committee recommended was to table this ordinance until the August 1st meeting. We're trying to get some answers for COGO, what consequences regarding our docking stations would be if that would be the number as opposed to the $35,100 in the ordinance. So the committee recommended tabling this until August 1st, and I would move that motion to table it till August 1st.
All right. That's tabling to a date certain of August 1st, a first and a second by Ms. Houston, or Councilmember Houston.
Question?
Yes.
Is it also possible, I mean, it's a first reading, is tabling necessary? We're gonna have another reading. I apologize, I'm on another piece. Proceed. My
That's a
brain.
motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll on tabling to a date certain of August 1st, 2022.
Edwards?
Yes.
So we get to this in the committee.
Yes. Houston?
Yes.
Kozak?
Yes.
Panzera?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
President Keeler?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-09 has been tabled until August 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Old business, item number 2.
Ordinance 2022-12, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a lease agreement with the Bobcat Boosters, Inc. for the use of Pierce Field.
Thank you. I did not assign this to a committee. It's an annual event. Is there any discussion? Okay, we will mark that as a second reading. Moving on to new business, item number 1.
Resolution 19-2022, a resolution to waive the provisions of section 529.07 B3 of the codified ordinances for the M3S sports event August 28, 2022 in the city of Grandview Heights.
Thank you. We already had a presentation here earlier by a representative of the M3S Sports. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Are there any recommendations?
The only open-ended thing for me is that the time, the start time and the end time, because we just got it as 7 to 9:30.
Right, that's, I don't, the actual event for it, is that would be the set time, that would be the lease, that's not the lease, that's the, alcohol, which I don't think is fine.
Yep, that's fine.
All right.
I have a question, maybe I missed this, but is there a deadline for passage on this, given that there's some time required, city attorney to work with the liquor commission?
I think they've already initiated their application. Generally, it's about 30 days for the Liquor Control Commission to.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
You may, Councilmember Houston.
Mayor, is the lease chief's supportive of this. I'm just noting the very early hour for alcohol consumption.
The police chief has requested 8 special duty officers for this event, which
Okay.
will obviously have to be staffed from people outside of
Right.
our force as well as inside our force.
So yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's for the lowest, right?
It's hardcore, nobody's drinkers as far as, very low key that time of day.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion? No motion, we will record that as the first reading. We will not assign that to the, moving on, ordinance, or new business item.
Ordinance 2022-13, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a lease agreement with M3S Sports for the use of Ready Roll Park.
Thank you. Is there any further information from Mayor or Director's office? No? All right, we will record that as a first reading. Moving on to business item number 3.
Ordinance 2022-14, an ordinance determining to proceed with an issue of bond in the amount of $25 million, certifying the same to the Board of Elections and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Can you also read number 4 since these are related, and then we will discuss.
Ordinance 2022-15, an ordinance authorizing the use of a portion of the proceeds of the obligations of the City of Grandview Heights, Ohio, in the estimated principal amount of $25 million to be issued for the purpose of constructing a facility for fire, police, and municipal services, furnishing and equipping the same, improving the site thereof, including infrastructure improvements and acquiring land and interest in land necessary in connection therewith, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mayor Kearns or Councilmember Panzera, would you like to speak on these pieces of legislation?
I'll start. Thank you, Madam President. As was brought up last meeting, this is the first of 3 readings to put the issue to the voters in November, which is what we are proposing. It's a bond issue. You're aware of the need, and I'm not going to rehash what we put in the joint memo. You've read that. You're aware of the need. You're also aware that it's a combo of voted revenue, $25 million plus cash on hand, which is a range, and we have a little cushion built in there, 6 to 10 million, for a total $31 to $35 million project. The team is the architect engineer estimating team is currently value engineering it and will be back in 2 weeks to present to you all. I don't believe that you all actually had the opportunity, those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet them. So this is the first of several presentations. This is very much in process, and certainly you're aware of the evolving conditions that led us here. Tonight we'll be focusing on fiscal strategy. The director has a nice deck that I got a preview of earlier today. But I really wanted to say a few words about the bond mechanism from my I guess layperson's view, not a finance professional. First of all, the city's AAA rated. We have very good, we've been very responsible, very good risk rating. We can issue bonds, but of course you need to service the debt, and that's how we come before you today. There's 2 ways that we can have revenue to service debt. Generally speaking, income tax or property taxes are the 2 big ones. You all know income tax can be volatile, but right now we're in a period where it is particularly volatile for reasons related to the pandemic, and property tax is a stable, long-term way to service debt, so it's well matched to the investment, which is really an investment in our core facility that's served us for 100 years. The city doesn't have any voted bonds on the books, and we haven't for some time. The last one, in fact, was 1961 that was voted, and that obviously was for the 1963 edition. So I really wanted to point all that out to you. Point out that we've been fiscally conservative. This building has served us well. gotten us through the first 100 years. We're looking to the next, it's outlived its useful life. We're full service. And as I mentioned last time, is the one thing I'm going to say about it. We don't compare well to our peer communities. We've looked at many suburban facilities in terms of the age and condition. In fact, it's rather stark and striking, as you might imagine. But when you review the millage and the property taxes that are imposed on the voters in those communities, we do compare well. In fact, we've been very, very responsible. So that's all I wanted to say to tee that up, and Mr. Panzera may have a few more thoughts.
No, that's well described. We have this presentation that's going to come from finance that describes a little bit more of the request that will be for the voters. My only correction would be that I don't know if it served us well, the facility that we have. It has served us because there's no choice, but it's widely known the level of obsolescence and the level of necessity that we're facing. So I don't have anything further to add that's material. The presentation here is going to hopefully clarify some things, and we are certainly welcoming questions as we go through this process. There's a wealth of information that is underlying to what you're going to see, but it gets really dry really quick. So if there's questions, we'll address them. Otherwise, there's a tremendous amount of data that is beneath what you're going to see in summary.
Thanks.
It's true.
Anthony maybe got some of the dry data, so we went on further, a long one with lots of dry data.
Okay,
as well.
before we get into this financial discussion, that's next on the agenda item, I just wanted to clarify, I will not be assigning this to a committee. If I did, it would be finance and P&A. By that point, you would have most of council anyways. I think it's a very huge decision that we need all council members present to have this discussion. I would encourage you, if there are questions that are not being answered this evening, please let the director or the mayor know what your questions are, so that they can be prepared for the following 2 meetings that we will have on this, additional if necessary. But I do want to make sure that this is a very public, open discussion, and that all council members are here for all of the discussion, so you fully understand what you're doing here. I also want to let you know, for timeline, we have the financial side of this evening. At mid-month, we will have the E&M team here to discuss the space and the issue of the actual building. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know so that we can prepare, either answer them now or prepare answers in the future at the next meeting, so that we have all the information to all the folks that it's needed. Yes.
If I may, I'll append my comments just briefly because Director Culper is not here this evening. We do not have a design. There's not a fun illustrative picture that we can present to the community at this point. There is a gigantic amount of program study that has gone into it in terms of spatial relations, program needs, departmental needs, future needs, etc. But in terms of what this will look like, that is, to be candid, that's kind of secondary to the necessity. We're starting with the fundamental that it is required. We know effectively what it's going to cost. But in her absence, I'm sure she would want to comment that and really emphasize that we are not at a design stage at this point. So those questions can't be accommodated because we're just not that far along in the process. We need to procure the funding, and if the voters are, if that measure is successful, then we will have the cash on hand to basically immediately start that process ahead of collection so that we can begin those very detailed design, and that'll be a public engagement as well once we have something on the table. But I just wanted to say that we're not, you won't find it as part of this particular presentation because it's just not, we're not there yet.
It's not. Well, we do have that presentation though. The the look of it isn't designed, but
That's
a
what I mean.
lot of planning has gone
Yeah.
into the square footage needed, how the relationship between things. So it's, a lot of thought has been put into what is needed and what the cost of that would be, and it's not an arbitrary number, but a lot of thought has gone into
We
that.
just don't have a
Yeah. Are there any further questions on these two pieces of legislation? No. All right, take it away, Director Miller. Let's hear all the fun information.
So the goal of this presentation is to provide financial information about the proposed bond issue, estimated project costs, and capital project costs in relation to the city's operating budget. So I'll start, these are the bond issue details. We are asking council to put on the ballot a $25 million bond issue with 28 years maximum maturity, which equates to 3.88 mils. That's $136 per $100,000 of county auditor market value and on an annual basis. And this is to construct a facility for fire EMS, police, and municipal services, furnishing and equipping the facility. You heard the whole spiel. But basically, it's to make this project here for fire, EMS, police, and municipal services happen. So a lot of the other language is just what the lawyers had us include in there to make sure we have everything covered. The city was first awarded a AAA bond rating by Standard & Poor's in 2013. This rating has been affirmed and maintained since. Issuing voted property tax-backed bonds allows the city to protect its bond rating and borrow funds at the best possible interest rate. Property tax is the best, most secure and stable backing for bonds because it's guaranteed to be collected if the voters vote for it. I said the annual cost per 100,000 is $136 a year. Anybody who lives in Grandview knows there aren't $100,000 homes in Grandview. So the county auditor's average single-family market value in Grandview Heights is $464,671. The average cost for the average home would be $632 annually, which equates to $53 a month. So we did a comparison to see where we are benchmarked against other communities. You will see Grandview Heights is number 10 out of 11 municipalities listed. And then even if you add in a 3.88 mil bond issue, we're still number 10, only above City of Columbus, based on effective rate. Then the calculation out to the right is what the taxes would be on an average Grandview value home in those various taxing districts. We put this together. Anthony found it very interesting, so we wanted to include it just to show how we compare to everybody else.
Yeah, it is, I'm sorry, I had a sidebar.
You're-
It is a little shocking, and I think if I can just make one comment while we're on the screen slide. I think it's also important to understand that what we're looking at is, from a benchmark perspective, it also reflects that all of these, literally all of these other municipalities have taken the steps to provide adequate and improved facilities for their workforce, their safety services, and their administrative services. So what you're seeing is effectively that, you know, we're at the bottom of this list, but more importantly, it also tells us that all of these other municipalities have gone through similar steps to provide for their community as well. So if the bond issuance is approved by the voters, we will still be number 10 out of the inner ring suburbs, municipalities within central Ohio, other than Columbus. Thank you.
As the mayor stated in her intro, the last time the city had a voted bond issue, it was in 1963 for $150,000, and that was to add the administrative offices, police department, and council chambers. The building was originally built in 1924. In 1936, we added a bay, and then in 1963, we had the voted bond issue. So our target project, as of today, is a fire, EMS, police, and administrative services facility. The we anticipate will cost between $27 and $30 million. Then we will have a cost to build a new Grandview Center at McKinley Field that will cost $3 to $4 million. And then we will address the site at 1016 Grandview Avenue for a cost up to $1 million. So our total targeted cost is $31 to $35 million. That will be funded through this $25 million bond issue and $6 to $10 million in cash reserves for total project funding of $31 to $35 million. Those cash reserves, that's the money that the city has saved over the last 9 years by spending less than we're bringing in and putting aside for this project because we knew that it was going to require a significant cash investment.
And that does not include our 105-day reserve.
Correct. We can do this without touching our 105-day reserve. So where did these numbers come from for the value, for the cost of construction? Well, we first started out in January of 2021. We anticipated, based on the Spaces and Places plan and internal discussions Liz had with the different department heads, that we were going to need 35,000 to 38,000 square feet. Based on discussions with other local cities that have built fire stations, we thought it would cost $400 to $425 per square foot, giving us a total all-in cost of about 17 to 19 million. We knew we wanted to invest $1 million at the 1016 Grandview Avenue site, which will just prepare it to be included in the Lyman Woods Park. It's not a major project up there, but we knew that something that had to be addressed. We couldn't just leave it as it was. So that gave us an initial all-in estimate of 17 to 20 million. Then we hired Freddie McHenry to do a fit planning estimate. They met with all of our department heads, everybody weighed in on what they needed and wanted, and we have a 41,300 square foot building. And thanks to market forces, we have a 30% increase in construction costs. And then 2 years of inflation around 8%, we're now at $575 to $659 per square foot for a total facility cost of $29 to $34 million. They suggested that site improvements would be $1 to $2 million at 1016, and this is where we discovered that in order for emergency vehicles to safely exit this site, it needs to go through this building. So, and to provide a facility that people want to go to that don't have fire trucks driving right by the window. So it was determined that a building very similar to this needs to be built at McKinley Field at a cost of $3 to $4 million. So after our initial fit planning, we were at 33 to 40 million. We recognized that the city couldn't spend that much money, so we all went in and saw where we could make cuts, and we were able to identify about 7,000 square feet of cuts. We went back to Freddie McHenry and we said, please do a value engineered version of your plan, and they will present that at the July 18th meeting. Our target cost for the value engineered is 27 to 30 million. We're limiting the Grandview, 1016 Grandview Avenue improvements to up to $1 million, and then the Grandview Center relocation is still at the $3 to $4 million mark. I have had some questions of where the $3 to $4 million came from. The building size we're looking at is 7,500 square feet, which is similar to this building. Construction costs will be $325 to $425 per square foot. It's cheaper than a fire station and a police station because it's a much less complex design. It's something that can be done at a cheaper price. So we're anticipating $3 to $4 million for that component of the project. To provide perspective on the finances of the city, this is a comparison of the general fund estimated revenue and budgeted expenses. The city's general fund accounts for most of the operations of the city, and this comparison shows there are not significant additional funds available for debt service. So we're expecting in 2022 to bring in $17,969,000. We're planning to spend $17,909,000. A lot of those costs, 80 to 90%, are related to salaries and benefits. So there's not a lot of flexibility in there. It also shows that the scale of a project, a $30 million project for a city of our size, needs a voted levy, needs a voted bond issue supported by an income tax.
Property.
Property tax. So in the last 10 years, the city has utilized available funds and bonds backed by hotel tax and income tax to improve our two most utilized parks, Pierce Field and Lyman Woods, and the municipal pool. In addition, we've prepared this site at the corner of Grandview Avenue and Goodale Boulevard for a new facility by building a new public works facility at 1260 McKinley Avenue. The next project that we need to fund is the piece that will allow Grandview Heights to continue to operate as a full-service city with adequate facilities for safety services. Are there council questions?
Are there any questions for the director? Yeah.
Um,
Councilmember Smith.
All the factors that involve the higher price tag, I understand inflation, the construction costs going up. And I'm not saying this to say I don't support this effort, but could we have locked in at an earlier time, locked in a better interest rate that would have at least mitigated this increased cost?
No, because when you issue bonds, you have to spend them within so much time. So you can't like borrow now and then, throw it in the bank and earn a bunch of money on tax exempt bonds.
Okay.
So, and, we didn't know the project cost has kind of evolved.
All right.
Are there any other questions for the director?
Would you like for me to provide a brief explanation on the second ordinance that was read?
That would be fabulous.
Okay, that is a standard ordinance, and it allows us, if before we issue if the bond issue is approved, before we've issued $25 million in bonds, if we've spent city dollars before then, we can allow ourselves to be reimbursed by that bond money. So this is a standard ordinance we've passed in the past when we issue bonds, and that's all that it's doing, it's just saying you could reimburse yourself if you decide you want to.
Thank you.
I have some brief but additional comments, just to kind of reinforce things that you've probably heard from me prior, and potentially from other colleagues and department heads alike. But the city has executed a strategy and a plan to do their public improvements, focusing first on the public amenities, the parks renovations, the municipal pool, building the new public works facility on McKinley Avenue, which was previously located on this site. Those were all funded without any additional tax revenue from residents, from property tax revenue from residents, I should say, to be more clear. In other words, self-funded. And those few projects consist of about $18 million in cash that the city has reinvested specifically for civic purpose, for public amenity. And my point of this is that had we not, we fundamentally would have the cash available to almost nearly self-fund this project. That was a very purposeful decision and line of planning. We felt it imperative and necessary to take those initial funds and deliver it to the residents ahead of our facilities. And to be frank and candid now, it's time to provide for the end of that planning, the final stage, at least at this point in time. There will be further needs. I don't anticipate them in the next few decades. We've exhausted the use of our existing building. It lasted 100 years. I'm using past tense already. It has lasted 100 years, and the anticipation for a new facility is anywhere in the 50 to 100 year range. So this really represents the kind of final stages of our very detailed fiscal planning. Everything has gone to plan, and that's that's why we're bringing this to the, that's why I'm hopeful we will have collective support from council to bring this to the voters.
Thank you. Are there any further discussion? Okay, thank you, Director Miller, for all of your hard work. Thank you to everyone who's worked on this project up until now, including previous iterations of this in decades past. This is a huge lift, and the amount of thought that has gone into this legislation is astounding, and I appreciate every single minute that people have worked on this. So thank you, everyone, for that. Next, we have other business. I don't think there's any other business. Yes.
For the record, recording ordinance 2214 and 2215 as first reading.
Those are recorded as a first reading,
Thank you.
correct? Comments from council members? Council member, Kozak, sorry.
That's okay. Today's the last day that you can register to vote in the primary on August 2nd or update your address. I went out today on voteohio.gov, and I also noticed that my polling location was different. I normally vote at Stevenson, and it's saying that I'm at St. Luke's on Fifth Avenue, so I called the Board of Elections, and they said because they anticipate a low turnout for the primary, they combined some different locations, so I would go and check your polling location to see where you will be. I looked at the sample ballot, and there's some voting for both parties on the central committee from the male and female candidates, and then also Kristen Boggs, because of the redrawn maps, she won't be our representative, and Allison Russo, I don't remember the number, if it's now District 7, it might have been 18 before, but she's on there on that side, so, and there wasn't a Republican candidate on that primary sample ballot. And I was also just gonna ask, because I asked a lot if we could get the city to encourage voting among residents. I'll put that request again later, or again, for social media and consideration.
I again would encourage council members as political elected people to go ahead and promote getting out the vote. That is not something that with our official social media that we have done for very clear reasons.
Are there any other comments from council members? No? I just have a couple of housekeeping things to ensure that we have the best minutes and listening experience for folks who might tune in electronically. Again, if you have statements that you read, I would ask that you ask when you finish reading them, ask if you would like them attached to the following minutes and submit them to save our clerk transcribing. Additionally, I would ask that everyone wait to be called on until I say your name, so therefore if there's anyone with visual or auditory issues, that they're able to understand who is speaking prior to your statements being said. So if someone's reading a transcript on YouTube or watching the video, that they're able to fully understand what's going on. That's all we have. So with that, we are adjourned.